Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV. You made the first October 2013 show. We're here on I guess a beautiful fall evening.
It is, yeah. It's
and
very nice.
My friend Eric here, and you got DanK on this side. We've got some stories to talk about and cannabis issues. I want to start out real quick with an update on Measure 21 and 22. Those are the two initiatives that they're gathering signatures for, the re-legalization initiatives. 21 is the amendment, and 22 is the revised OCTA from what used to be M80. And we were at Saturday Market last Saturday. I had a booth on the Freedom Plaza, the Wayne Morse Freedom Plaza. You know, the county renamed that. You know, they said now it's just the Freedom Plaza is just a smaller area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Well, they call it whatever they want. It's still the whole plaza, the Freedom Plaza. Far as I'm going to hell with them, you know. But anyway, we had the booth there, and we gathered I think about 20 signatures on each petition. So I had a pretty good turnout, and we didn't have any people to go over and gather signatures at the market, though. Is what we really need. So we'll be there next weekend, and if you can be there on a Saturday, just come on by. We've got clipboards, pins, and all we need is some help gathering signatures to get it on the ballot. And just a quick note on the time. The early turn-in is on May 23rd, 2014. That means we have 7 months and 15 days. And for the final turn-in, we have 8 months and 26 days. So
it comes quick.
It comes quick and run out of time, but we need the help. So now's the time. And I came across an editorial in the Capital Press that Eric and I both had a chance to look over, and it's kind of comical, really, except that it's kind of maddening, because this is primarily an agricultural newspaper.
Absolutely.
And they come out with an editorial saying farmers should just say no to hemp. The subtitle says, the Oregon Department of Agriculture's decision to write regulations for growing hemp is full of legal potholes for prospective growers. Prudence would dictate staying away from the crop. Legal potholes. Do you think that was a pun intended? Or?
You know, for sure. And when I first started reading this, in some regards, it was making some sense. And the one part that I'll give them credit for is that, yes, one of the points they bring up is that this hasn't been passed by Congress yet, so it hasn't actually been technically a law in regards to the hemp. So, technically, if a farmer decided to grow hemp, he could technically be prosecuted for that under the laws that currently exist, that are still written, that haven't been changed by Congress. So in that regard, to some degree, you're at your own risk if you decide to start growing hemp right now. So from that regard, when I first read that, I thought, okay, that's pretty sage advice. That's similar to somebody who would be interested in opening a medical marijuana facility before any laws such existed. You would run the risk, and people have done it, and they've taken the risk. After that, this thing takes a markedly depressing turn, and as you read it, you begin to wonder who exactly is. Who are they working for? And I mean, when you read exactly some of their statements,
The thing I thought it was, I know what they're smoking.
Exactly, it's absurd. And one of the biggest claims that me and you were both talking about was that here's one of the main sentences that has been highlighted here. It says, as a crop, hemp is okay, but proponents oversell its attributes. So they're saying is that it's a pretty okay crop, but what everyone is saying in terms of what hemp can do as fiber, as fuel, that it's being oversold. It's being oversold. So what they're saying is that everything that people are saying that hemp is about, it's not all that's cracked up to be. The other thing that I find really absurd is that they actually claim that the greatest value of hemp is that it could be used as a cover crop for growing illegal marijuana. So what they're saying is that the biggest value that hemp has is that it can hide your illegal marijuana grow. I'm assuming that all of these people who work here must be younger than I am, because even people my age have at least seen or heard of the Hemp for Victory video that the United States government put out during World War I and World War II that promoted the use of hemp, because if it weren't for hemp, specifically with the use of rope, fibers, parachutes, rucksacks, we probably would have had a harder time during the war and the war effort entirely if it weren't for hemp. And the only reason, and this is something that even the most basic of people know, the only reason hemp was outlawed was through the actions of Randolph Hearst and other timber barons and newspaper magnates who already had too much of a financial stake in the timber industry and the paper industry, and they knew then what everybody knows now and what ancients have known for thousands of years is hemp is the best product you could use in terms of paper and any type of paper products. And for them to say that its greatest value is that it's a smokescreen for you to grow illegal marijuana is a joke.
Yeah, definitely, because anybody really is in the know knows that you're not going to put medical marijuana, which is the female plant with the buds, into anywhere near commercial marijuana where what do you call it?
Cross-pollination.
Cross-pollination. You don't, so there's no way. There's no way they're going to be anywhere near it. So it's just, what's the word? False information. They keep putting it out again,
Exactly. It wouldn't matter if you're a hemp farmer and you're trying to grow hemp to disguise your marijuana, your cannabis grow. It's actually going to mess it up, and you're not going to get a very good product, and vice versa. If you're trying to grow cannabis or you're trying to grow hemp and you have the one or the other that's trying to hide it, it's not going to work, which is exactly why when people have been drafting the idea of legalizing a hemp industry here in Oregon, many people have made it specifically clear that it must be on the east side of the Cascades so that it doesn't have any chance of cross-pollinating with the cannabis that would be used for medical reasons and in the future possibly recreational reasons that would be grown in the west side of the Cascades, in the valleys, the Willamette Valley, and further on south, where traditionally other plants like hops and grapes and vineyards have thrived. That's where that's the perfect climate for the smokable, usable cannabis. The hemp, Eastern Oregon is an ideal environment for that, and there's been legislation, not legislation, but the talk of drafting the legislation that when this does happen, that those two will be completely separated entirely. So for them to say that hemp is a mask for the illegal use for illegal marijuana grows, it's funny they start that sentence, in our opinion, and this is the problem with how dangerous media can be. You don't even have to be informed to form an opinion. You could just put out any misinformed thing and it could be put off as information, and it's not. And
this political cartoon that was included shows an old timer got a hold of a hand plow being pulled by a mule, and the farmer is saying, the Pacific Northwest has a perfect climate for pot and hemp. And then the donkeys, or the mules, saying, the climate for pot and hemp in Washington, D.C. is a little harsh. Actually, I can just change that to Salem, Oregon.
Exactly. Exactly.
The climate for pot and hemp in Salem, Oregon is a little harsh. Looking for this editorial.
It is.
So anyway, I guess, Coach, they say any news, or not news, but any press is good press.
And I'll tell you one thing, though. This is just another reminder. Just be careful what you read. I mean, anybody can form an opinion and put it out there and pass it off as real information. I mean, some of this is almost as bad as something you would hear from the 1940s and 30s when this whole, bogus propaganda war started. It still sticks out to me that the greatest value of hemp is that it could be used as a cover crop for growing illegal marijuana in Oregon. I mean, this sounds like this is coming straight from William Randolph Hearst himself, trying to cover for the timber industry, which which makes sense being that we are in Oregon and we are in the Pacific Northwest. And so it makes sense that the Department of Agriculture would steer people away from growing hemp. It would put a lot of, not entirely, it wouldn't decimate the timber industry like some people said, but it wouldn't, we wouldn't have a use for as much of it. And even though that would be better for the general public, it wouldn't be better for the people holding the companies. And
there's so many,
money
yeah,
rules.
there's so many things about hemp that that they don't even know about or get into. For instance, planting the crop, it does incredible things for the soil.
Yes.
You can take, I've forgotten the details, but you can take soil that has got major problems and plant hemp on it, and the hemp will actually help straighten out the soil.
Yeah, it restores the ecosystem and the vegetation. Absolutely.
It's just it's incredible. So anyway, let's get into the Stop the War headlines, Stop the Drug War headlines. This is for the week of October 3rd. One of their stories is defelonization, the next step in winding down the drug war. Defelonization of drug possession is starting to take hold across the country. California looks set to join the list of states easing up, and Washington State could be next.
You know, that's really important, because as long as any type of marijuana crime is a felony, you need to understand that when you've seen here in Lane County, they release prisoners from the jail. It's not just happening in Oregon. You know, I remember this happening in California when I was younger growing up. It's been happening everywhere. A lot of times they make room for marijuana felons and replace them with violent felons. And that's the problem, is as long as you have this overflow and this, you know, too many felons in one place, unfortunately, marijuana felons are some of the last that they let go of. And as long as we can change that from a felony to misdemeanors, they won't even be in that predicament in the first place. So this is a huge step.
Yeah. Another big step too here is Latin America leaders talk drug reform at the UN. The UN General Assembly this week got an earful from Latin American leaders tired of the deadly same old when it comes to drug policy. So we're moving.
This makes sense, because a lot of the collateral damage from the drug war is taking place in their streets, and you know, we don't see it as much as some of these other countries do. Now, a lot of people have had friends, family members, neighbors, or you know, somebody that they've known, or even just maybe a story you heard about of someone going to jail for drugs. The real toll on the war on drugs doesn't even happen in this country. And I can assure you, if the things that were happening in Mexico, Colombia, South America, and Central America, if those things were happening on the streets of America, this drug war would be over with. It would be stopped already. If American citizens were being, you know, and I hate to bring this up, but if they were being beheaded in Los Angeles, they were finding, you know, 50 bodies outside of Chicago, and just say that's what happened back in Prohibition. And it's happening now. The only difference is we've managed to keep it from crossing our borders. But if those things were happening in America, you know, this drug war would be over with. And that makes a lot of sense why these Latin American leaders want this over with, because it's killing their countries. It's decimating their economies. And it's horrible.
See, here's the reps urge new direction with the drug czar picked. Now here's a unique idea. 5 Democratic congressmen are calling on the White House to nominate a new drug czar who is not a cop, but a scientist who will set policy based on science, evidence, and fact.
You know, that almost just makes too much sense to actually work.
It does. I think so, yeah.
Well, it looks like we got to go, guys, and we will see you next time in the next segment.
See you next segment, you bet.
And now, a message from the American Marijuana Growers Association.
Hi, I'm a farmer, and I work hard every day to grow high-quality marijuana, the biggest cash crop in these United States. I'd like to thank you for your support of U.S. marijuana policy. Because marijuana is illegal, I don't have to pay taxes. Even better, prohibition leads to artificially inflated prices, which means a better quality of life for me and my family, as long as I don't get caught. Just as importantly, your tax dollars support thousands of U.S. agents who work tirelessly to keep low-grade, foreign marijuana out of our country. So thank you, America. And remember, whether you're nauseated from chemotherapy or just in the mood for a nice cool buzz, choose the best pot in the world, American homegrown.
Yeah, we're back. It's like a bad debt. You got Dan or DanK, whatever you prefer, and my friend Eric. We were talking about the Stop the War drug headlines in the last segment. We didn't quite get finished up with that. This is from stopthedrugwar.org, excellent organization, and I recommend highly you sign up for their email chronicles that they send out, and has a lot of good information and keep you up to date with what's going on. There's another headline: majority favor marijuana legalization in California, poll finds. The respected Public Policy Institute of California has just released a poll showing major support for legalization in the state. The first time the PPIC has reported a majority on the issue. The poll results are likely to encourage efforts to get an initiative on the ballot next year. Now, you think about that, get on the ballot next year. See, they're looking at the same thing we are. You know, they got a little over a year to get,
yeah.
So they're going to have to really get with it. And they got to get a lot more votes than we do, signatures. Medical marijuana update. California localities continue to grapple with medical marijuana issues. Meanwhile, officials in 3 states are moving forward with implementing medical marijuana laws, and a key Kentucky politician says nice things about it. In Wyoming, marijuana initiatives. A marijuana law reform in Wyoming. State activists are working to make it so with 2 different initiative campaigns, one for legalization and one for medical marijuana. Peru retakes a spot as world's #1 cocoa producer. Repress it in one place, it pops up in another. Peru has regained its place as the world's leading cocoa producer as a decade of eradication and fumigation takes its toll on the Colombian crop.
And I'll bet you that Peru's leaders are probably some of the ones who weren't happy because now it's moved to their country. They got to deal with it.
Yeah. Armed drug suspect killed in a Houston SWAT raid. A Houston SWAT team's dawn drug raid ends with an armed homeowner shot dead, and that isn't the first time that's happened.
Not at all.
2 more drug war deaths. A Texas marijuana grower and a California man who might have been a drug dealer are the year's 31st and 32nd drug war fatalities. This week's corrupt cop stories: cops peddling pot, cops gobbling steroids, cops with sticky fingers, and of course, a crooked prison guard. Just another week in the drug war corruption beat.
You know, and that's definitely referring to, if you guys haven't heard, that police officer in Georgia who was busted for selling marijuana out of his squad car. And while I'm not going to sit here and say this happens all over the place, the point of what happens when people complain about issues like this in regards to law enforcement. One thing about law enforcement I can say that is very similar to being in the military is that it's very, very difficult to get away with something on duty that other people don't know about. It's very hard to get away with something that your superiors don't know about, that other people around you don't know about. And for this guy to be selling weed right out of his cop car, it's not possible that there's nobody else in the entire force did not know that something was going on. The problem I have is that, sure, maybe no one else on the force was selling it with him. The problem I have with law enforcement today is that these other people are keeping quiet. They're not going to turn in their own, which is what we need them to do. We had this issue for anybody who was here in Eugene in the not too distant past. We had an issue with some rogue cops. And people call them rogue cops. I don't call them rogue cops. It's just like it's in basketball. It's not a foul until you're caught. These guys should have been turned in before it got to the level it got to here in Eugene. And the reason is there's this fraternity mentality with law enforcement that protecting the reputation and the integrity of their fraternity is oftentimes more important than protecting the community. And we unfortunately got to experience that here in Eugene with a couple of police officers. And I was always dumbfounded as to how nobody else on the force was reprimanded or even fired, because there's no way possible that these 2 gentlemen were doing what they did without other knowledge. And that's the problem, is that these other police officers on the force that people think are upstanding, and they turned a blind eye. And that's the problem I have. And that's why I don't have too much respect for these guys, because they aren't doing the job they're supposed to be doing. They're taking the easy way out. And the cop that was selling in Georgia, there's no way that these other officers on this force didn't know. And, and that's a shame.
Yeah, boy. Another thing I want to bring up too real quick here is I got a phone call Saturday from an old friend of mine that's in federal prison. He's up in Sheridan. His name's Danbo, and I'll be talking about him a lot more in the future. But he's got a trial coming up November 19th. So I'm really going to be trying to push this big time. We need court support. We need as many people as we can get into that courtroom, because he is on trial, you could almost say for his life, because he's looking at 30 years. And you know, and he's in his mid-50s, or early 50s. So, but anyway, he's a great guy, an incredible person, and one of the most well, I've said many times, the bravest man I've ever met, I've ever known, and a big believer in freedom, Constitution, and herb, and very big on it. And in fact, people talk about the Compassion Center, and well, Danbo and his partner Sharon are the ones that actually started the Compassion Center, and way back before Todd Delato. I mean, way back. That was the real initial beginning. So anyway, we'll be talking about more of that in the future. But yeah, it was kind of strange getting a call from somebody in prison.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
But it was good to hear from him. It's the first time I heard from him for quite some time. So anyway, I'm going to talk about a case in Iowa. And this is one of those, and then, by the way, Iowa is a state that I remember reading somewhere just recently that they're working on a medical marijuana deal in Iowa. And here's a good example of somebody that needs one badly. This gentleman, he's 47 years old. He suffers from terminal cancer. Painful, cancerous growths pepper his rear end. Yeah, oh, jeez. And the only relief he found is from marijuana. But the Scott County deputies seized it from his Long Grove home. Next month, Scott County Court will determine if McKenzie is a chronic pot grower, undeterred by arrests, or a patient denied a home marijuana remedy readily available in 20 other states that have legalized medical marijuana.
You know, Dan, this kind of touches base on something we talked about, I think it was last week, when we were talking about how I mentioned how much it costs to incarcerate a person in prison. And that has become a business, unfortunately, in this country. Putting people in jail has become a business. It used to be a safety service, that if somebody committed a crime and was a danger to society, they got put in jail. That has changed to now putting somebody in jail is a profitable business. The downside to that is, in reality, despite the fear that we're constantly being put under as a society, there aren't enough bad people to fill prisons. And what I mean by that is there's not enough rapists, there's not enough murderers, and there's not enough people who commit serious violent crimes to fill the prisons. So in order to fill the prisons, you need to start making other things more illegal, and then you have to start making those things a more serious crime, something that constitutes somebody spending more than just a day or two in prison. And here in this state, and in this county specifically, they want to put a terminal cancer patient in jail. And the only reason I can see is because, like I've covered in past episodes, it's a lot of money to put somebody in jail. And when somebody tells me, well, that's absurd that we're spending that much money to incarcerate somebody, and I said, it's not absurd if you're on the other end making that much money. And that's the problem, is the people that are making that much money are setting policy, and they have a huge financial influence on policymakers. That's where this has to stop, because we as the people ultimately have the decision. We can vote these people in. We can vote these people out. We can vote for these initiatives that are coming up. And here in this state, it's just incredible. It starts off with saying that court records portray this gentleman as a career drug dealer. Medical records confirm the guy's a terminal cancer patient. So here you got one side with the court saying he's a drug dealer, and you got his medical records saying, well, this guy's dying of cancer, and his claim is, I'm using this to alleviate what little time he has left on this earth. And the prosecutors, and this is the problem, is these greedy, corrupt prosecutors who, they're like sharks in water that smell a drop of blood. They're just going in for the kill. Yeah. And the other problem also is not aside from all the money being made off incarcerating people, these prosecutors, they get their promotions through putting people in jail, through any means necessary. And what people got to understand is, sadly, in our judicial system, it's not the prosecutor's job to find the truth. It's the prosecutor's job to put people in jail, period. So these prosecutors could care less if this guy has cancer. They could care less if he died right there in the courtroom in the middle of his trial. All they need is this guy to be another number on their resume. It happens here in Oregon. It happens everywhere, and it's just a shame.
Yeah, it says right here, independent physicians affirm McKinsey diagnosis will lead to certain death. But before that, he has to answer to Iowa's justice system. That's what you're saying.
It's incredible, yeah.
Yeah, he said he used to be more of an outdoorsy type and an avid bagpiper, sometimes donning a kilt to pipe competitively. Heart disease and a cancer diagnosis have turned him into an online research junkie looking for ways to manage his ailing health with marijuana and chat with other survivors. So let's hope for the best, and all we can do is hope for that deal. It's just
and it's crazy to show you where the prosecutors and where this, to me, it always goes back to where are their loyalties lie. We as taxpayers pay their salaries. Yet everything they do is almost as if these companies are paying their salaries. And by companies, I mean, in this instance, it almost scares me that they're saying that this person who's dying of cancer cannot use medical marijuana. However, at the same time, and I've seen this happen in instances where people have gotten cancer and they've refused chemotherapy treatments and then have been ordered by a court to have to take the chemotherapy treatments. Whereas now he's being ordered by a court to not do something that would help him. And this actually is kind of close to something I just recently came across, as through my consulting work, I deal with and help with a lot of cancer patients. And I'm currently helping a terminal cancer patient whose doctor would not even fill out his medical marijuana application. And here's a man who was given a 6-month terminal diagnosis, and with just, according to his doctor, 6 months to live, they wouldn't even sign off on his medical marijuana application, despite the fact that it's not a prescription. The doctor cannot get in trouble for this, but those fears still persist. And it's just a shame that, he went and got his card anyway. I helped him get it through, one of the organizations here in town. But it just shows you, it's incredible where some people believe and where some people, their fears take them. And this is a shame.
It is. Real quick, the American Cannabis Nurses Association statement on concurrent cannabis and opiate use. It's a 2-page document that if you have any connection and need some information, get a hold of dankbagman@hotmail.com and they'll get that to you. It's a really great 4-page document about talking about pain and taking it with opiates and why that's good and all that. So good information. Appreciate Eric coming by, and you guys, average, welcome come by Monday night, 7:30. We're gone.
Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Why these people who want to do so much good